Welcome to MathLink Academy, where we're connecting the dots. In this particular unit, we're going to talk about the law of cosine. So let's get started. Law of cosines. In any triangle, the square of any size equal to the sum of the square of the other size minus twice the product of these two sides multiplied by the cosine of their included angle. Now, if you see here in red, you see these three different formulas, and they're basically the same formula. So if you just use one of the formulas and understand the concept of the law of sine, it is okay. So in our case, as we look here, we have a square is equal to b squared plus c squared. Then what we do next is minus 2 times bc. In this case, I'm going to underline that so you can see it. 2 times BC, which we used that B and C earlier, times the cosine of angle A. Now the key is this A, angle A, is corresponding to the opposite side of A. This angle B will correspond to the opposite side of B. This angle C will correspond to the opposite side of the C. And so side C. So what I'm saying is the pattern stays the same for all three formulas to find the side A, B, or C. But really, if you just know one of the pattern, notice the pattern here. Notice the pattern for B squared, the second one. So B squared is equal to A squared plus C squared minus 2 times AC times the cosine of B. And then also notice this pattern here of C squared is equal to A squared plus B squared minus 2AB times the cosine of C. Again, it's all about recognizing the pattern. So let's try to look at how to use this law of cosine.
One sec. I didn't get that.
Oh, so somebody jumped in our class, so we want to make sure we get them out that class. You got to watch out for your talking computers that we have there.
Else I can help with?
No, it's nothing. Now that was interesting having somebody come in our class here. But let's look at this, guys. So here's our example. So given two sides and the including angle, determine side X of this oblique triangle shown in figure below, and round the answer to 3 decimal places. Key is it's an oblique triangle, so it's not a right triangle where we could use our trig functions per se. So we had to use the law of cosine. Now, if you looked at some of my past videos or other videos that I have, we talked about the law of sine. And so I'm actually going to start with that, the law of sine. Can we use the law of sine for this particular one? And remember, the law of sine was given like this. We had an x, the side, over the sine of that angle is equal to, and I'm going to use A and B, so I'll use little a and little b, so don't use x, let's use little a and little b, is equal to b over the sine of angle B. Now, as I'm writing this on our screen, notice that if I try to use the law of sine, try it on your own, guys, that we're not able to solve the problem because we end up with 2 unknowns. And that's an indication when that happens, when you cannot use the law of sine, you probably can use the law of cosine. So that's a great indicator of using the law of cosine. So what we're going to do is go on our whiteboard, set it up, and then let's solve for this problem. So here we are, and we set up our drawing exactly how it is on our previous slide. So on our whiteboard, we have this. So notice our x is unknown, it's in red. So I'm gonna label that for right now, our x is unknown. So to use the law of cosine, and I'm going to give us some room, I'm gonna say x squared, because remember we had a squared or b squared, c squared, is equal to 8.7 squared, remember our formula, plus 9.1 squared. So those are other 2 sides that's given, minus 2 times 8.7, and 9.1. We use those numbers again. And then what I'm going to do in red, I'm going to put it right here, and that's supposed to be multiplied by the cosine of 34.7 degrees. Now let me rewrite that so you understand what I wrote earlier. So I wrote down x squared is equal to our pattern. So I'm going to write it again so we get the pattern. 8.7 squared plus 9.1 squared minus 2 times 8.7 times 9.1 times the cosine of 34.7 degrees. Okay. I did that so we can reinforce the pattern over and over and over and over again. Now, we're just going to solve this directly. We're going to solve everything on the right-hand side, the equal sign. What I would say, figure out what this is, these two, and add them together, get a value. Figure out what 8 times 7 and 9.1, multiply that, and then multiply that by 2. Don't forget there's a minus. And then also figure out the cosine of 34.7 degrees. So do that on your calculator. I want you to try this on your own so you know how to knock this out and get the correct answer. So I'll say multiply. So notice what I group in the red. Figure out those values. Give you a number here minus another number times another number. What you should do first is order of operations. Again, look at some of my past videos, my other videos. When we talk about order of operations, you multiply first before you do those subtractions. But I would combine these together. Combine this, multiply what those values are, figure out whatever this value is, do this value right here minus the overall value. Now I'm going to give us a final answer, and you go ahead and do that. If you want to pause this video and see if you get the same answer I get, that'd be great. So it looks like what I end up with once I do everything correctly, my x squared will equal to about 28. It's really approximation, so I should use approximation sign. 28.32205. Again, make sure you figure out those individual numbers, the squares, the cosine, and then use your order of operation correctly. Now, again, we're not looking for x squared, we're looking for x. So how do we get x by itself? In this case, we'll take the square root on both sides. So we have an approximation, the square root of 28.32205, and that will give me approximation around about 5.322. And so that will be my answer for the value for x. And if that's it, let's circle it. And that's how we use the law of cosine. So let's look at one more problem. Let's say I'm giving you just 3 sides, and I want to find one of the angles of this oblique triangle. Now, let's choose a particular angle we may want to find. Let's say I want to find this angle here, angle A, which is right here. So again, we cannot use the law of sine. Even though I like using the law of sine, I'm not able to use that. We're going to use the law of cosine. And we're looking for the angle. So let's set this up correctly. Now, since I'm looking for the angle A, my opposite side is 5.322. So how I'm going to use this, now watch, I'm going to write this. I'm going to write down 5.322, and I want to square that. And I want that to equal to, in our case, we'll do again 8.7, that's a side square, plus the 9.1 square. So you got to make sure we set it up correctly. Minus 2 times 8.7 times 9.1 times the cosine, in this case, of that opposite side to that 5.322 322 be angle A. So that's my setup. Now I'm doing this one because you want to make sure you do your operations correctly. So the first thing I would do is square each of the terms and then figure out what that value is. So let's actually do step by step. So this is squared. This would be like 28. And we actually did this problem earlier. Look at your work. Look at what we did earlier with the problem before. And we should already know the answer. But let's at least see how we get the answer. So it's like 28.322, I believe, is equal to 8.7 squared. We have 75.69 plus 9.1 squared. That's around about 82.81 minus, now notice what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to multiply 2 times this number here. I circle it in red. I'm going to write it down in red. It's 158.34. That's what that's equal to, times the cosine of A. Now the next step I'm going to do, I'm leaving it in green. I should just add these 2 numbers next and then move them on the other side. That should be your next step. So let's write that down. So that'll be 28.322. Now let's add what those 2 numbers are. That would be 158, I believe, 0.5, if I'm not mistaken. Minus, let's write what I wrote down in red, 158.34 times the cosine of angle A. Everything is all in black right now, and we can solve it. Next step, I'm going to underline, is I'm going to subtract both sides by this 158.5 on both sides. So what that gives me over here will be a negative number. So a negative 130.178. It's equal to a negative, don't forget, there's a minus sign in front of that 158.34, cosine of A, and you got it. Next thing we're going to do is divide both sides by this value here, negative 1.158.34. Divide both sides by negative 158.34. And what that would give me, since we're dividing by 2 negatives, it'd give me a positive number. So let's write what that number would be. It'd be close to like 0.8. So write this down. 8221 is equal to the cosine of angle A. Again, go back over the video to look at how I got this particular value. Now I'm not done because I want to get A by itself. So let's actually do this particular problem on another whiteboard. So we have the cosine of angle A is equal to 0.8221. Again, to get A by itself, we're going to do the arc cosine on both sides, or another way of saying cosine inverse on both sides gives me A by itself. And in that case, my A will give me approximation, if you did it correctly on your calculator, 34.7 degrees. And if you notice, that was the answer we got before, or that was one of the numbers we used to solve for another problem earlier. This is our step when we want to find the angle. Again, we must set it up with the right pattern of the cosine. And if you remember, this is going back to a previous problem. We end up that same angle using this side here. All we did was drew the triangle and decided to find what that angle is. Again, I hope this helped. Go over the video again. Also look at some of our supplementary material that we have on our MathLink website to get some more insight on how to do these type of problems. Again, let MathLink bring it together. Thank you for watching this video.